All right, let's get started. Welcome to Three Waters, One Future. This is a webinar to talk about the three campaigns that are operating to protect Minnesota's precious waters and some of the most globally significant watersheds from the pollution caused by sulfide mining. My name's Aaron Klemz. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, or MCEA. MCEA is a 51-year-old nonprofit. We're a group of lawyers, policy experts, lobbyists, and other professionals who work to protect Minnesota, its people, and its environment. This conversation, in particular our work on mining, is fueled by MCEA supporters. Thank you for your support. This allows us to continue this work on complex issues at the Minnesota legislature, in the courts, and in agencies. Individual support is about half of our budget, and it's key to our success as an organization, so please consider a contribution to make even more of this work possible. We've been working on at MCEA on sulfide mining proposals for a very long time, since we were founded 50 years ago. And we're really truly in it for the long haul on these issues. And we've been successful in using our work in the courts and agencies of the legislature to prevent unwise and unsafe mining proposals from polluting Lake Superior, the Boundary Waters, and the Mississippi River watershed. MCA is part of an ecosystem in this regard. We partner with a lot of folks, local residents, tribal governments, conservation organizations, public health groups, and much more in this regard. And that's why we're thrilled to be able to talk about this issue with two key partners today. This webinar, as we do with all our webinars, will be recorded and is available on watch online at MCEA's YouTube page and on our website as well. So if you missed one of these webinars or you want to share it with a friend after you've seen it, please feel free to share that link, and we'll also be following up with an email for all the attendees today that will give you that link to the recording. So here's what we have planned today. We're going to break down what happened so far, what we expect to see coming. And we're going to answer your questions. We're going to hold 10 minutes for the question and answer period. And this is the way you can participate in this webinar. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A tab. Please enter your questions there. Don't enter them in chat. Enter them in Q&A. And we will get to as many of those questions as we possibly can at the end of our time with these panelists. And I'm going to introduce them now. So I've already introduced myself. I'm Aaron Klemz. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at MCEA. I want to introduce our three guests who are going to be providing the details and the information today. The first is Kelly Applegate. Kelly Applegate is the Commissioner of Natural Resources for the Mille Band of Ojibwe and leads the Water Over Nickel campaign, addressing the risk of the proposed Tamarack nickel mine to the water and resources in the Mississippi River watershed and other watersheds. Welcome, Kelly, and thank you for joining us.
Anin, bonjour. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Knopf is the Executive Director of the Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness and has been working on at least two fronts on the sulfide mining proposals that are in Minnesota. Both the Twin Metals proposal near Birch Lake on the edge of the Boundary Waters Wilderness, and as a key partner in the work on Polymet New Range near Babbitt and Hoyt Lakes. So thanks so much for being with us today, Chris.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
And lastly, we're joined by Kathryn Hoffman, who's the CEO of MCEA. As a staff attorney, Polymet was her first case for MCEA in 2010. And since she's become as MCEA CEO, MCEA has, with partners, led the work resulting on reversal and revocation of nearly every permit issued to the Polymet mine proposal. We joke that Polymet lost in court so often they had to change their name. And now Kathryn will talk about New Range and the risk that it poses to the Lake Superior watershed. Thanks so much for making the time to join us today, Kathryn.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, I want to start by just asking a little bit about your organization as well as your efforts to fight sulfide mining in Minnesota. And then one word that describes how you're feeling about the next phase in the fight to protect Lake Superior, the Boundary Waters, and the Mississippi River watershed from sulfide mining pollution. Kelly, let's start with you.
Yeah. So good morning, everybody. I'm Kelly Applegate, Commissioner of Natural Resources for the Mille Band of Ojibwe. The band holds a responsibility to be stewards of our natural surroundings, and I carry that responsibility forward through our work with Water Over Nickel. That's our campaign to protect our water and our cultural resources. Water Over Nickel is an initiative led by the Mille Band to protect Minnesota's land, water, and people from the threats posed by nickel sulfide mining. The proposed Tamarack mine sits just 1 mile from the homes of our tribal members, dangerously close to the Rice Lake National Wildlife Refuge that holds bountiful beds of our sacred wild rice, Sandy Lake, and the rivers and wetlands that connect all of us in the Mississippi River watershed. Our efforts center Indigenous voices and call for better alternatives to destructive mining practices. So we invite all Minnesotans to protect what we cannot replace, and that's our water. If I had to describe how I feel about this next phase in just one word, it would be determined. Determined to ensure future generations can inherit Minnesota's clean water. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Kelly. That's great. Chris, tell us a little bit about the Friends efforts on sulfide mining and one word about how you're feeling about what's coming up next.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. And thank you again to MCEA for putting on this program this afternoon. Friends of the Boundary Waters has been around for almost 50 years. So we're coming up on our 50th anniversary this year. And we have three programmatic areas that we work on: wilderness, people, and community. So we protect the wilderness, focusing on, in particular, the copper sulfide mining threat. We connect people to the wilderness, particularly our No Boundaries to the Boundary Waters education program. And we support the communities that are gateways to the Boundary Waters. We have an office up in Ely to that for that purpose. So we have three interconnected programs. We view them as reinforcing each other like strands of a rope here. Where one word to describe where I'm coming from would be fighter. And in this particular context, I want to clarify what I mean by that. What is pulling on Kelly Applegate's word of being determined, and a determined, robust, effective advocacy in the courts, federal and state court, in the halls of Congress. My colleague right now, Steve Schultz, is in Washington, D.C., at the Minnesota legislature, and then in the public outreach and communications. So having robust, determined, unabashedly proud and effective advocacy. And where I'm coming from on this, my lived experience, so to speak, is that I'm a child of the Midwest and the industrial heartland. So I grew up in a city, Cleveland, Ohio, where my hometown river caught fire. And over the course of my lifetime, 600,000 people moved out of the main county where I grew up. So I know what deindustrialization looks like. And I spent my summers where my father grew up in Muskegon, Michigan, along the beautiful Lake Michigan, fishing on a pier, White Lake, leading into Lake Michigan. And right across on the north shore of that lake, Hooker Chemical, that very same Hooker Chemical company that gave us Love Canal, was dumping poisons into the ground, going right by that very pier where myself and my three younger siblings were fishing. And so I bring that to coming here to Minnesota, where I'm raising my children and grandchildren, and that we have the Boundary Waters with 1,200 lakes right along 150 miles of the Canadian border. We have the greatest of the Great Lakes, Lake Superior, with 10% of the world's fresh surface water, and that we are the headwaters of the Mississippi River. So we have that heritage in Minnesota, that clean water heritage. And based on my life experience, I want to protect that heritage for the next generation and leave my kids and grandkids with a clean water future.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Kathryn, what has MCEA been doing on sulfide mining, and what word are you thinking about for the next phase of this work?
Thanks, Aaron. I'm really thrilled to be here with Kelly and with Chris, who have been such great partners in this work. So thanks to both of you for joining us as guests. So MCEA as an organization is driven by law and science. And we do a wide range of work. We work on clean energy and climate change. We work on water protection and agriculture. But probably our longest running body of work is on sulfide mining. And so we came to this issue many years ago with a curiosity. Is it possible to make this work in Minnesota? We have this long history of iron mining. We have a long history of protecting our water. Where is the industry at in terms of technical innovations, new ideas, really respecting the water resources? And after years of study and inquiry, by 2018, when the first of these proposed mine, the PolyMet proposal, got its permits from the state, I'm sorry to say, the mining industry had not moved at all. And it was clear that they weren't going to. The track record of the mining industry is very bad, as people know. The changes to the project over the years, and this was a long process, were minimal. And those that did happen were forced essentially by government regulation. So basically the mining companies, PolyMet, was going with the bare minimum of what was required while simultaneously lobbying to make the bare minimum even lower. So my word for today is clear. I'm clear that the sulfide mining industry as it stands today isn't a good fit for Minnesota. The risks are too high. The industry is not acting with the responsibility commensurate with the risk, and our water is too precious. And so, people know at this point, after 2018, we beat PolyMet in court, which is our job as the lawyers for the environmental movement. They don't have the permits they need. They're a long way from getting those because the courts have said they have not met the baseline requirements of the law. And right now, PolyMet and other companies are getting ready to have another go at our resources. They will come up with new proposals. They will call them different. And what I'm clear about is at this point, they don't get the benefit of the doubt because they haven't earned it. It's incumbent upon the mining companies to prove that their operations respect the environment, the water, and the communities. And I'm clear that they can't mine here unless they bear that burden of proof. Not coincidentally, the word clear also describes the waters of Lake Superior, which is what we're working to protect here. And it borders both my home state of Michigan as well as the state I work to protect now, Minnesota.
Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. I think, and we're really primed now to think about the potential impacts on these three different precious watersheds across the state. We have about 200 people here today, which is fantastic. And many of you that are in the audience have been following this issue for a long time. Some of you are potentially new to this, though. So just as a really brief refresher, as you know, sulfide mining for copper and nickel has a long track record of pollution. The EPA has called it the nation's most polluting industry, particularly for water. And that's the reason why that's true is because when sulfide ores and water and air interact with waste rock and what's left behind after they process ore, it creates acid and heavy metal runoff. And that pollution can continue for hundreds of years after a mine closes. So let's ask our panelists, and I'm going to ask your help for this. Help us orient us toward the overview of the risks associated with sulfide mining in these specific watersheds and what resources are at stake. I'm going to start with Chris on this question. Chris, hundreds of thousands of people visit the Boundary Waters every year. These pristine lakes are even more vulnerable to pollution than most. What are some of the risks to this precious place?
Thank you, Aaron. The risks are threefold. First, that the clean water heritage of the Boundary Waters with those 1,200 lakes interconnected by portage trails will be lost. And so we'll have mercury, that's elemental mercury brought into the water system as methyl mercury. And we have a possession limit of 6 walleye. We won't be able to eat all those 6 walleye, because of that mercury will be in those fish. Wild rice that's important to indigenous culture and to non-indigenous culture as well will be killed. And so we'll lose that clean water heritage. I'm going to the Boundary Waters on Friday. So folks like myself that have their maps in their office when we should be working, we won't be doing that as much. We won't be doing that as much. The second impact will be that the economy built around supporting that outdoor economy will be damaged. There will be fewer people going up to experience the Boundary Waters. There will be fewer people spending money to access the Boundary Waters. So there will be a direct economic impact to the local economy built around that outdoor clean water heritage. And third, by subsidizing Antofagasta that owns Twin Metals, what you're doing is you're distorting the economy. You're pushing a boom bust economy on an area as opposed to trying to support local businesses, small businesses, in building a broad-based economic prosperity for the long term. So you're distorting the economic future by providing these subsidies, in this case to a Chilean foreign mining conglomerate, as opposed to supporting locally grown businesses. And so you're going to be suppressing those locally grown businesses by creating this mining zone with Antofagasta and Twin Metals.
Great, that's really helpful. And good luck on SAG in the fall. It can be a real pain.
Yeah.
So Kathryn, you talked about Lake Superior in your introduction and how much you care about it and its connection to where you grew up and where you live now. It's the greatest lake of all time. It's the GLOAT. And 10% of this drinkable fresh water on the planet is in Lake Superior. And St. Louis River, which is just downstream of the proposed PolyMet NorthMet New Range, whatever they're calling it this time, mine, is the biggest U.S. tributary to this greatest lake. So what should people know about this watershed and what risks that sulfide mining poses to it?
Okay, I love that. It is the greatest lake, so that's awesome. It's also under stress already, right? So Lake Superior is under stress from invasive species. These issues around mussels and whitefish have been in the news actually a lot lately, if you've seen those stories. Climate change is a stressor for our lakes. Contaminants like mercury and PFAS or forever chemicals are also stressors. And now we're talking about adding this additional stressor of sulfide mining. As I mentioned earlier, the first proposed mine, Polymet, I'm just going to call it Polymet for ease, got those permits in 2018. And we saw something interesting happen through that process was we saw that downstream communities that were along the St. Louis River tributary and out to Lake Superior really started to make themselves heard. So notably the Fond du Lac Band, whose reservation is downstream, the city of Duluth, the residents of the city of Duluth got very involved. For example, pushing their city council to ask for an independent hearing, independent from what the DNR was doing on mining, to have a judge hear the merits of the potential permit and make a recommendation about whether the permit was lawful and met our environmental standards. And that's because the people who live downstream, who depend on the St. Louis River and Lake Superior, know best how crucial these bodies of water are for people who live on them. And so mining in particular really brings forward concerns about mercury contamination of the fish for people who consume the fish, including indigenous people, drinking water impacts. There's lots of people, businesses, the city of Duluth, who pull their drinking water from Lake Superior and from the river, as well as wild rice. And so these downstream communities joined MCEA and Friends of the Boundary Waters in litigation on the Polymet mine. As you know, we won, but we are far from done here. This watershed is still at risk, and we are expecting a new proposal this fall, or possibly the same proposal, a new wrapping. And so we have work to do ahead of us to continue to protect Lake Superior.
Thanks, Kathryn. Kelly, can I turn to you for just a second? The watery surroundings of the Tamarack mine proposal contain tremendous wild rice stands, resources critical to the Mille Lacs Band and the folks that live there. So what should our audience know about the risk posed by this proposed nickel sulfide mine?
Sure. Great question, Aaron. Well, the proposed Tamarack mine, it sits within just a few miles of some of our most vital wild rice waters and cultural resources that the band has harvested for generations. Our people have been here for hundreds of years, and we live in a way with these resources that all requires, clean, fresh water for them to survive and ultimately support us and our culture. And as we know, nickel sulfide mining has never been done safely in water-rich environments like we have in this area of Minnesota. Anyone that knows that area near McGregor, the little town of Tamarack itself, kind of the Big Sandy area, it's all pristine water recharge wetlands, and it's just not a good spot to do this type of mining. When this kind of mining meets wetlands and the dangers that could happen, acid mine drainage and the forming of sulfuric acid to poison the waters, harming the ecosystems, and the ecosystems that are in these wetlands. They have a chemistry that's evolved over time, and any adjustments to the pH, to sulfides that are created from sulfates and all of this, you take out one cog of the ecosystem, and it would greatly impact that and eventually affect not just the Mille Lacs Band, our indigenous culture and our ways, but everyone that relies upon clean water in that area. It risks our wild rice, our drinking water, our medicines, and our ability to practice our culture. And for a people that have suffered at the hands of things getting taken from us, history has not been great to indigenous peoples across the globe, really. This would be another sad chapter in a taking of our resources that could eventually impact us. In the proposed Tamarack mine, it's not just a Mille Lacs Band concern. It's a watershed moment for all of Minnesota. The mine threatens the Mississippi River, the St. Croix River watershed, to the Upper Duluth Water Complex, putting our critical drinking water resources, habitats, and all of our communities at risk. Every glass of clean water that's drank by a child in Minneapolis, every grain of our sacred manoomin or wild rice harvested from Sandy Lake, every walleye caught in Mille Lacs Lake, and every paddle dipped in the river's flow depends on the choices we make today about projects like the Tamarack mine. Clean water is not optional. Manoomin, our sacred wild rice, is not replaceable. And once these resources are polluted, we can't go back.
Thanks. That's really well said, Kelly. And as a proud resident of Fridley, Minnesota, which is downstream and the place where Minneapolis and St. Paul both get their drinking water, I know you're exactly right about the importance of that for people across the metro area. Let's turn to a topic that we talked about a little bit in the emails promoting this, which is what is the federal action? What are the federal actions that have taken place so far, and what do we expect to come? There's been a lot of conversation at the federal level about sulfide mining since President Trump's second term began. And I'm wondering if we could start with Kathryn here and ask you to bring us up to speed on what's been happening at the federal level. Particularly, there have been a number of executive orders, but can you help us separate what's actually happening in terms of action from noise?
Yeah, thanks for framing this up. I think that's a really important question, is that distinction between what is meaningful and what is noise. Because there have been a lot of executive orders and federal actions. I'm not going to go through all of them. We don't have time for that today. But in sum, what we see are executive orders that order federal agencies to try to make mining permitting go faster, to invoke emergency powers to say that we can evade environmental laws like the Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, environmental review requirements at the federal level. There's also some statements in those executive orders about getting money to mining companies, subsidies, grants, loans, financial assistance to help them go faster. And all of this is sort of wrapped in this language of critical minerals with suggestions around this is key to national security and domestic energy and so forth. And so executive orders, just I think people know this, but executive orders do have the force of law. But, the way that these executive orders are written, they're really saying like agencies go do things. So the executive order itself is not saying you're exempted from the Clean Water Act. It's saying agencies go, investigate this. How can we exempt ourselves from the Clean Water Act to make ourselves go faster, right? So there's sort of a next step from the agencies. The agencies so far have responded by putting out some guidance that says, for example, we should do environmental impact statements for critical mineral mines in 28 days. This is clearly a process that takes much longer than 28 days. That's not going to be a good EIS. And also, they have specifically put the PolyMet project onto a list of fast-tracked projects. Okay, so that's a lot. Like, what does that mean? I see my job as an NGO lawyer is to call out this distinction between bluster and threats and actual legal authority, right? Because this administration really thrives on bluster and fear. And if they claim they have the authority to do something and everybody just agrees out of fear or uncertainty, then, well, we've already lost, right? We have to challenge it. We have to force them to actually prove that they have the legal authority to do it. And we have to understand the distinction. So I do want to note this fast tracking of the PolyMet mine doesn't mean anything. No legal impact at all. There's no federal money, there's no exemption to regulations. It just means the administration's watching. But we're watching too. And so I'm interested in meaningful changes, not just empty actions. Some of these efforts to sidestep environmental laws because of emergencies, those might work, but they're not effective at this time. It's not clear if the Trump administration has that authority. So, Congress has given the president the authority to invoke exemptions to certain laws if there's an emergency, but they have to show there's an emergency. And there's litigation over that right now that the Minnesota AG's office, among many other states, has initiated. So there's really no reason for us to give ground on that at this time. And so my takeaways here, just to wrap up, and sorry, that was a little bit long, but first is pay attention to what's bluster and threats and what's real. That's why MCEA is here, is to help us pull those things apart in this unusual political moment. And the second thing is that Minnesota law is more important than ever. That's going to be our protection. And so the fact that a lot of our polymet wins are based in state law, more so than federal law, is a good thing. And we want to continue to keep our law strong and find ways to strengthen it even further.
Great. That was really helpful. Thank you, Kathryn. Chris, can I talk to you for just a second about this too? Because I know the Twin Metals proposal involves federal mineral leases. Federal actions on that Twin Metals mine proposal are particularly important. So can you help people understand a little bit what's happened so far? I know that Steve's in DC right now. Maybe there's some breaking news updates or something.
Thank you, Aaron, for the question. The starting point for this is to look at where we started when President Trump took office in January. So the starting point is that Twin Metals leases have been canceled. So under the Biden administration and Secretary Deb Haaland at the Department of Interior, those leases were canceled. So in January, Twin Metals did not have any mineral leases, federal mineral leases. And the second thing, the Biden administration had instituted protections on public land, on 225,000 acres of public land adjacent to the boundary waters where sulfide mining couldn't happen. And so as of right now, both those protections remain in place, but the Trump administration has a spectrum from noise to actions going on that threaten both of those. And so this past summer, there was an effort to unwind both the protection on the federal public land adjacent to the boundary waters and give Antofagasta mineral leases in the big ugly budget bill. We were successful in having that taken out, but the threats remain both administratively and legislatively. So right now, there's a hearing of the House Natural Resources Committee in Congress that started this morning at 9 o'clock our time, where there are a series of several bills affecting mining issues that kind of build on Kathryn's statement that there are executive orders that the Trump administration has instituted saying to different departments and agencies to do this and that. Well, the bill is 4060 here that Congressman Stauber had introduced that would codify many of those executive orders to fast track toxic mining without sufficient environmental review. So that is going on literally right now, this morning and this afternoon in Washington, D.C. that impacts us here in Minnesota. And so we'll get to a call for action later, perhaps. But that is going on right now, and that's part of the effort to legislatively codify actions of the Trump administration. There have been additional actions to legislative efforts to give Twin Metals its mineral leases back. I mentioned the big ugly budget bill where that was threatened. There, with the filibuster in place right now in the Senate, that's a very tough hurdle to legislatively do that. But that threat is out there. Additionally, administratively this summer, the Department of Interior, there was in July there was a memorandum. It was a very short memo. It's only one page right here that was issued on July 17th as a basis for undoing these detailed legal opinions that the previous administration had issued with that had prevented Twin Metals from getting its mineral leases. And so in a very cursory legal opinion, the current Trump administration purportedly try to start to unwind administratively what the Department of Interior had done. That is laying the stage for what we anticipate will be two things that the Trump administration will try to do administratively. They'll try to give Twin Metals its canceled mineral leases back, and it will try to remove the protections on public lands adjacent to the boundary waters. So right now we are preparing for those administrative actions and getting our legal team placed to look at some of the basic issues of venue and timing and things like that for legal challenges to that. But that's what we anticipate coming down at the federal level with respect to the boundary waters and Antofagasta Twin Metals.
That's a very helpful overview, and we will definitely get to some actions that folks can take at the end, near the end of this webinar. Thank you. Kelly, talking about the Tamarack mine, the federal government provided a number of grants to Talon for their proposed ore processing facility in North Dakota and to study carbon sequestration at the Tamarack site. I'm wondering what your reaction to these grants and similar actions taken by the federal government has been, and what you're seeing coming on the horizon.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Aaron. This really gets to the heart of the dilemma that we face with the climate crisis that we're all experiencing. Addressing climate change is going to require a wide range of mitigation and adaptive strategies. Electrifying transportation and potential carbon sequestration projects will likely be part of the response. These grants can be seen as kind of an investment in these strategies, but they're also tied to specific proposals at specific locations that really further the private investment interests of the mining companies. So the federal investment in the proposed ore processing facility is a good example of this. That's the example where Talon Metals is opening this ore processing facility over in North Dakota. Talon Metals selected the plant location without any public input, with the intention to process ore transported from the Tamarack mine, which is still in the earliest stages of its environmental review process. So there's this quickening of things that are rolling out, and we, as the impacted tribal nation, with where the proposed Tamarack mine is being sited up by, just 1.3 miles away from our community members that have well water, we weren't properly consulted from the beginning about this. And, this type of federal investment coming from projects, it can make it seem like such a huge done deal. And it can create pressure on local regulators to approve the proposals, which ultimately puts the money in the pockets of these global mining conglomerates. And they have that history of a legacy of contamination. So yeah, there's a lot to be concerned about.
Thank you. That's really helpful. At the outset of this webinar, I mentioned that we're kind of entering a new phase of this work, and we've talked a lot about things that are already cooking or happening at both the federal level and elsewhere. I'm wondering what actions you're preparing for this fall. What should people expect over the next few months in this regard? And given the retreat of the federal government enforcement of environmental standards, what should the state of Minnesota be doing in response to all of that? I want to start with you, Chris. Obviously, you mentioned a couple of federal actions that seem to be on the horizon. Are there other ones you want to let folks know about? And if not, what should the state of Minnesota be doing about all of this?
Sure. Thank you, Aaron. At the state level, we have this is what's so important. We have a federal system, a federalism system, where we have a state and federal government that works together. And at the state level, it's hugely important. And as Kathryn outlined, the state government and our state regulations and laws have been hugely important in dealing with the threat from polymet. At the state level, we're what we're doing, we're expanding our advocacy capacity to have greater capacity to work with the legislature, trying to pass, not probably in 2026, but perhaps in 2029 over a several year period, state legislation that would protect Minnesota's clean water from the threat of copper nickel sulfide mining. And so we're very much focusing on the long term to doing that. And it's really critically important in our advocacy work is also a second part of that is dealing with some of the cultural issues out there. And there's sort of a broader rural urban divide, great polarization in the country. We're really trying to minimize that. And I hope people, that we're not just preaching to the choir here. I hope that people have different views from what I'm espousing right now, and that we can have a real dialogue on this. I think it's hugely important to deal with the cultural cleavage in this, and that our communication and our messaging is one in which we try to bring people together. I know there was a question in the by one of our viewers here asking, this is very important to the Iron Range, the economy up there. People are looking for jobs. And I'm very concerned with the sort of false prophets of economic prosperity. We've already seen where we've had to extend unemployment benefits to miners right now up there. And we're not going to have the jobs that are out there to be transformative. That's just I've lived my whole life where these false promises of we need to poison our environment and we need to poison where we live in order to live. And I think it's very important for us to deal with that and to, kind of coinciding with what we're doing in our advocacy is to really work for broad-based economic prosperity that works with the community colleges up there instead of consolidating all the community colleges in the region into one, maintaining the independence of the community colleges and really working to build the local workforce up there and to encourage private businesses, small businesses up there. So what we'll see in the upcoming years from us is to really have those conversations and to be ingrained in the communities. And that's why we have an office up in Ely and staff people in Grand Marais as well as in Ely to really have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think you're right about the need for really being thoughtful about how we talk to people and taking on some difficult conversations. I think that's exactly right. Kelly, I'm wondering if you have any federal actions that are specific to Talon's mine proposal that folks should be expecting this fall or early next year, or any state actions that you think would be helpful.
Yeah, so one of our big milestones is coming up for water over nickel, and the proposal from Talon Metals for the Tamarack mine in their permitting process, and that's the public comment period. And I really underscore that because that's an important part where viewers here and others can get involved. And this public comment period will be held by the Minnesota DNR. We anticipate this will take place sometime in the middle of 2026. This is a critical opportunity for Minnesotans to share their concerns and help us push for stronger protections against the damage nickel mining could inflict on our environment. Our work ahead is pretty clear. Water Over Nickel launched its first ever Minnesota Water Outlook Survey this summer, and the results were pretty surprising. We showed that more than half of Minnesotans are unaware of nickel mining's impact on clean water, and only about 16% of Minnesotans are aware of the proposed Tamarack mine. So that shows we've got some work to do, and in the coming months here ahead of the public comment period, we're really going to be stepping it down and going full blast with trying to make people aware of the risks and garner some support. So we're continuing to raise awareness of the risks associated with the proposed mine and encourage Minnesotans to pay attention and participate in that public comment period that's coming up.
Well, good to know, and we'll put that on the calendar and be ready for it alongside you. Kathryn, what are you anticipating on the PolyMet proposal? Are there actions that the state of Minnesota should be considering right now, especially given the way the federal government is acting?
Yeah, so we are expecting PolyMet to do something this fall in terms of pushing forward a proposal. It could be application for a new federal wetlands permit. I think that's a possibility, especially given the sort of concurrent efforts from the EPA to narrow the scope of the Clean Water Act and wetlands that are covered. It may also be, moving a proposal forward at the state level as well. One thing that's going to be different about that almost certainly is the scope. So since the last round of permitting, the PolyMet proposal has gone into a joint venture. So Glencore is the owner of PolyMet. They went into a joint venture with a Canadian mining company called Teck that has mineral interests on the other side of the Laurentian Divide, the Boundary Water side. So PolyMet's on the Lake Superior side, the Smisaba or Teck deposits on the Boundary Water side. And now they're all owned by one sort of joint venture entity. And so one thing that we may see is a bigger proposal for a larger area that now threatens both watersheds. So that's something to watch for. And as far as what the state should be doing, I mean, the state should be looking at whether there are real changes to this proposal or whether they're just new ways of describing the same bad ideas. As I mentioned at the outset, the courts have said this proposal needs to be different, needs to be better. PolyMet has not earned the benefit of the doubt. This proposal did not meet standards last time, and there were even efforts to cover that up by suppressing the comments of the EPA staff from the public record. So a healthy dose of skepticism is warranted. And I would say with the level of changes that are needed, this is going to have to go back to square one in terms of an environmental impact statement. So that's really what the regulators need to be doing, is saying, if you have a new proposal, okay, it's a new proposal. We need to start at the beginning of the environmental impact statement and not the nonsensical 28-day federal environmental impact statement, but a real, robust state level environmental review process.
Got it. So I'm just going to call people's attention to the fact that we're about to move to questions and answers. So if you have a question on your mind, be sure to add that to the Q&A. I have one more question for our panelists, then we'll move to some of the audience questions after that. And really, you've been really great, all of you, at describing what kind of the landscape looks like and what we expect to happen. I know that every one of our organizations and Water Over Nickel have been doing a lot of work to provide opportunities for the public to get involved, to have their say on these proposals. And everyone who comes to our webinars always wants to know, what can I do? What action can I take? So we'll just do this kind of quickly, because I think you all have done a good job of explaining what's coming, but how can people stay in touch with your organization, with Water Over Nickel, with the Mille Band, and take action? And I'm going to start with Kathryn. I know MCEA's got a current action on our website. Talk a little bit about that, other ways people can stay involved and get involved and take action. Can you start by telling people which website I'm talking about?
Yeah, mncenter.org.
Thank you.
And now we've got a link in the chat. So go ahead and click on that and you can sign on. This is an action to tell Governor Walz that you care about sulfide mining and that you're worried about it, and that 500 years of pollution is not worth it for 20 years of mining, which is what we're looking at. The governor is a key player here. His agencies will be making decisions about these mines. And so this is a place you want to make your voice heard, because the governor's office will be making decisions about permits in the coming years. One other thing you can do, we know that we're stronger together, right? In this kind of scary political moment, I think it's really important that we gather and recognize how many people are doing this work. I want to invite you all to MCEA's annual event. It's on October 5th. It's called Defending True North. We do have tickets left, but not a lot. This is going to sell out. So get your ticket today. It's a really inspiring and fun event where we can celebrate our hard-won victories around Minnesota's environment.
Great. Thank you, Kathryn. Chris, Friends of the Boundary Waters Wilderness does a great job of giving people avenues for action, giving them a chance to plug in and keeping them informed. Is there anything specific that you're doing as an action right now or coming soon? And how can people stay involved generally with Friends?
Thanks, Aaron. And I know our website has been dropped into the chat here for everyone to see here. You can go to the website right now and our Take Action tab. And we have, as I mentioned, 4090 right here. This is being considered by the House Natural Resources. We have a tab where you can send a message to your member of Congress and to your senator. So do that today. Do that today, because we have not everyone is on board here in Minnesota with respect to protecting the boundary waters. The second thing you can do is if you have a business, if you belong to a church, synagogue, or mosque or other faith institution, join our Clean Water Coalition. We are stronger together. So we have a Friends of the Boundary Waters Clean Water Coalition. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon via Zoom where we get together to discuss these issues. So we want to grow our Clean Water Coalition. And the third thing you can do, if you're interested in, if you really like writing letters to members of Congress and calling people, you can join our Citizen Action Network to do just that. We meet twice a month in person and via Zoom. And it's a lot of fun, and we make outreach both nationally and in Minnesota. So Citizen Action Network, Clean Water Coalition, and responding today to HR 4090.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Kelly, we're talking about this upcoming comment period on the Tamarack Mines environmental review. Where can people get more information about that, and how can they stay and plugged in to be ready to comment and take action when that time comes?
Sure. Probably the most handy method is to go to our website, waterovernickel.com. And like you mentioned, that public comment period is going to be coming up. We will have resources and tools there, how we can all create a stronger voice together for these efforts. And follow our Water Over Nickel on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook. If you go to Facebook and search for Water Over Nickel, that'll enter you into their logarithm to start seeing more of our posts. And our posts are there's a lot of really cool imagery, a lot of wild rice, and a lot of natural environments of our area, so that people can actually see what we're working to protect. So,
Great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kelly.
Yep.
So we're going to move to some audience questions, and there's some really thoughtful ones in the Q&A. Thank you so much for all of your contributions to that. I saw this early on, Alice's question, and I want to steal this, to be honest. I'm sorry, Alice. I hope you're not feeling too proprietary about it. But Alice asks, what is worth more, 10% of the world's fresh water or blank percent of the world's copper? That's what I want to put on my sign for the next protest, but I don't know what to put in the blank. Do any of you know? I don't know, Kathryn, what do you think?
Boy, this is not a number that's in my head. It is a very small percentage, then certainly far less than 10%. We may have to follow up with something a little bit
No,
more.
I have the number if you don't have
You have the
it.
number in your
Okay.
head?
It's
I knew you would.
0.1%.
Okay. You guys know Aaron has like a weirdly photographic memory, so.
Yeah. But yeah, Alice is exactly right. I mean, like if you're talking about the magnitude of the value of these resources in terms of fresh water versus copper. Copper is an essential metal. It's used in a lot of things, including clean energy but a lot of other things too, like Christmas lights. But we're talking about 0.1% of the overall global supply of the copper, if PolyMet were to go online and behave according to what they've said they will produce. Let's talk about actually, Chris, you got to this question a little bit earlier, and I wanted to pose it to the other panelists as well, because I think it's a really good one. Jeffrey in the comment says that families and communities in the Iron Range are deeply affected by the lack of jobs and opportunities now, and concludes by asking, how can we help guide more economic stability in these areas without risking the water and environments that all of them and us cherish? And I think that's a great question, and it's really well framed. And I'm wondering Kelly, if you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, so looking at obviously our mining laws in Minnesota are greatly outdated. So there needs to be some serious overhaul and work done with looking at that. And that's based off of science, that's based off of looking at the law and the legal frameworks. But I really, I can understand where, Jeffrey's question comes in here about what about the economic side of things. And, I think more solutions can be brought forward about building a robust economy for areas that have mining and diversifying and investing in those areas in other ways. And maybe there's some climate solutions in all of that with alternate technologies and whatnot. But it just boils down to the risk to the resources, and it's an indigenous perspective that we're kind of cradling these resources on the earth in the short time of our lifespan that we're here. And really the goal is to hand this world down to those next generations, in a better way.
Do you have any thoughts about this question that was posed?
I'll just add that, this is a tough thing. We definitely want people to have good jobs and jobs that can support families. And I agree with Chris's comment that the promise of mining is oversold in this regard. But it's also true that the range is a place, like a lot of rural places in the United States, that's struggling. MCEA has put forward some ideas on alternative uses of the polymet site. So notably, we've talked publicly at times about an idea we call the Sundog proposal that puts battery storage, wind turbines, solar panels at the site. And it's really an ideal location for that for a variety of reasons, not least that it's already transmission line connected, which is a challenge sometimes of putting up new clean energy projects. So there are some jobs and innovative. We want to move the range forward in terms of clean energy innovation, and that would be a good first step. We also need the support and help of local politicians. And so, would love to see more of these ideas coming from the range itself. And that's part of the reason that we have an office in Duluth. Not for the electioneering purposes, we don't do that, but for to help to connect with the community and help put forth and create positive solutions there, coming from the region and not just from the Twin Cities and the capital.
Thank you. Another attendee has asked, and I think it's kind of a dimension of this topic here, is how do you and how should I answer the question as to the needs for these metals? Where on Earth or in the US should we be mining, or should we not at all? What's the state of recycling these metals in the US and elsewhere? What's the possibility of a recycling industry on the Iron Range and in Minnesota? And what's the environmental safety of such an industry? So I think just generally this question of if not here, where and how? And I think it gets to the point of that we do need metals for the economy to function, but sometimes there's not appropriate places to do it. And I'm wondering if any of you have thoughts about the recycling angle or other places to mine. I'll start with Chris because we didn't talk to you in the last round.
Sure. Thank you, Aaron. If we just recycle the copper in Minnesota here at the level that Europe does, we would not need polymet or twin metals, for the copper production. And so there was a question to that point. So let's really have an infrastructure in this state where we take recycling seriously, where we take the diversion of waste and make it a resource that we can use. And so that's the first, maybe the Hippocratic oath for the environment here. Let's do no harm first. Let's recycle where we can and get the resources from what is otherwise considered waste material before we go to the mining here in Minnesota for copper. So,
thank you. That's really well said. Kelly, you have thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I sit on a state board for critical materials recovery. It's a task force that is a result of some laws that were put forward and passed in a bill. And we talk about the need for recycling and the industries that be producing the electronics and various appliances that have actual refined critical minerals in them, in most cases in pure form, that just get thrown away. And, so how do we, this group is looking at how do we get those back into a circular type of thing where they're incentivized to become back into recycling rather than just, ending up in the trash and then being hauled to the landfill because sadly, a lot of these critical minerals are just sitting in the landfill. We're also working on ideas to get those out and back into this equation as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really struck by there's an author named Adam Minter. He's a journalist who works for Bloomberg News, but he wrote a book called Junkyard Planet back in 2019. And he toured the Twin Metals site and said, I've been at dozens of recycling sites in China, some of the dirtiest places you can imagine, and the dirtiest and most inefficient recycling operation is cleaner than the cleanest mine. And I thought that was a really well said way of putting that. Um, I'm looking at the clock and I realize we're running a little bit low on time. I'll put it back to our panelists just for one last word. Is there any last thing you want to let people know about before we sign off today? Chris, let's start with you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Aaron, Kathryn, and Kelly for this opportunity this afternoon. I would say to the folks that are watching that you are ultimately the key. That really public policy is driven by the public, and so I want to thank all our supporters at Friends of the Boundary Waters here that are watching, but broadly supporters of Water Over Nickel and MCEA as well. That you are the key. That we have agency, we have control of our future, and that you are the key to it. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you to everyone that's watching.
Really well said. Kelly, what do you have to say as a final word for our audience?
Yeah, I would just share that, the Mille Lacs Band in our fight, what we initiated here with Water Over Nickel, we started off with just, our tribal concerns, but we soon realized that everyone, relies on clean water, and we'd like to offer it up, for everyone to get involved in this initiative. It's really it's not associated with any political party. We all need clean water to survive, so it's in interest of both major political parties, so we can move forward in a good way, preserving the future of our water here for the state of Minnesota and ultimately the world. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And Kathryn, I'll give you the last word. What would you like to let people know about as we end this webinar?
One thing I've really been emphasizing to people lately, because I think it's important to keep in mind, is that Minnesota still gets to decide how and when our minerals are mined. So there's a lot of stuff happening at the federal level. A lot of it is concerning, and we should be concerned, and we should respond collectively. And ultimately, the PolyMet decision was made at the state level, and any other mining operation decisions will also be made at the state level. So you may feel powerless in the moment, but you are not powerless because you have a voice when it comes to your state legislator, when it comes to our state agencies, our governor. All of these folks are the folks making the decisions, and we still get to decide. And so making sure that we cut through the fear and bluster of the moment and are clear about controlling our own destiny, and that we assert that and take control of it, I think is a really important and powerful thing to remember in this moment.
That's a perfect place for us to end because I completely agree. And I'm so thankful to Chris and Kelly and Kathryn for sharing their expertise with us today. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for attending and for taking action with us throughout this process. So thank you very much, everybody. I just want to let you know a couple of housekeeping matters. We will be sending an email following up. I know there were a lot of links in the chat, and it's useful to put them there, but also it might have come at you a little bit too fast. We're going to send an email that summarizes the actions that you can be taking right now and some of the resources that our panelists shared during the webinar today, so you can follow up with that. So don't worry if you missed something in the chat. We'll get it to you by email. MCEA's event is Defending True North. Kathryn talked a little bit about this. It's on Sunday, October 5th. We'd love to have you there and see you there. Join MCEA staff and board as we celebrate a year of defending the people, places, and waters that we all care about and work toward a better future for all Minnesotans. Go to mncenter.org to buy your tickets today. And I want to just thank again for supporting this work. We genuinely can't do this without you. We all welcome you and welcome your support. So thank you so much for your time today. And thanks again to Kelly, Chris, and Kathryn. All right. Thanks for joining us for lunch. We really appreciate it. And have a great day.
Thanks,